Aloha, and welcome to Leadership and Role Models, where we study, present, and discuss the leadership principles of distinguished leaders in order to foster young leadership aspirants to select the role models and emulate them. That is, for them to develop a passion to pursue achieving or surpassing their role models' leadership accomplishments. But first, let's study them. Let's learn from them. Let us participate in your development. My name is Leo Hira, and I am your host for this series. Role models we selected are legendary Marine Corps General Chesty Puller and famed aviatrix Amelia Earhart. We selected Chesty because critical aspects of his leadership principles are in sync with today's leadership needs. For example, his emphasis on bonding with his Marines, your employees, and leveraging the knowledge of his enlisted personnel, especially the battle-experienced non-commissioned officers, to illuminate his own leadership to reach the goal and objective of extraordinary success when leading people. We chose Amelia because she was a pioneer in a highly technical and hazardous field in her day, early aviation, because of the strategy she used to achieve success, and because her example inspired women to pursue professions and careers in their own right when women were being excluded from certain careers. Amelia is an excellent role model to emulate when aspiring to lead in a field or a profession. This is our third episode in this series, with the first being on trust, the second on people-centeredness. In this episode, we cover two topics: the role that experience plays in the development of leadership skills, that's Chesty's example, and the example set by Amelia on how to fund becoming and sustaining leadership in a profession or a field. So, on experience, an age-old question. Are leaders born or developed and built? There's broad agreement that there are traits that are innate to becoming a leader. In other words, with those innate characteristics, they are born to lead, but that does not mean they will become successful. Successful leaders, even those with innate abilities, are developed and built. And a critical part of that development and building is experience. So, let's define experience in the context of leadership that makes Chesty so special and relevant. To be developmental experience, it must be seen as a personal process of not just, but it certainly does include, observation and practice, adding to an aspirant's knowledge base, skills, ability, and the capacity to inspire and manage people to achieve organizational goals and objectives. Chesty wanted to enlist in the United States Army to fight in the border war with Mexico in 1916. However, because he was underage, he needed his mother's permission to enlist, and she refused consent. So in 1917, Puller enrolled and attended VMI. However, America entered World War I in April of 1918. Chesty was inspired by the heroics of Marines at Belleau Woods in France, so Chesty left VMI in August 1918 to go where the guns are. Chesty enlisted in the United States Marine Corps as a private and attended boot camp at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Parris Island, South Carolina. However, World War I ended, but as the Marine Corps was still expanded, Chesty attended non-commissioned officer school and officer candidate school at Quantico, Virginia, graduating on June 16, 1919, as a second lieutenant in the reserves. That is, he received his coveted officer's commission. But shortly thereafter, a reduction in force resulted in a choice for Chesty: go on inactive duty or shipping off to Haiti, where he would assume temporary office status to lead local Haitian gendarmes in fighting rebels as part of the U.S. intervention in that country to protect American interests. He chose Haiti duty. So to that point, Chesty rejected classroom and barrack study and a 4-year wait for his commission. He rejected going on inactive status to wait for the next war. Instead, Chesty embraced a course of gaining battlefield experience to become a successful battlefield leader. His objective:
there's no substitute for experience. That's how you learn. Take my example. From the beginning, I went to the sound of the guns. I led small units in small wars through the jungles of Haiti and Nicaragua. Sometimes I acted autonomously, taking monstrous hikes in the pursuit and punishment of our enemies. We nailed them time and again. They even put a price on my head. They never collected.
Now, did he make the right choice? Well, let's review what happened in Haiti. In Haiti, Chesty was faced with numerous challenges. The first was jungle warfare. Chesty had no experience in jungle warfare, so he must have asked himself, who does? Chesty's insight: his Haitian non-commissioned officers. They had battle and tactical experience since the counterinsurgency operation had already been underway for years before Chesty's arrival as a junior officer. They became his well of knowledge. For them to share that knowledge, he needed to gain their trust, and he did. The gendarmes were very loyal. So loyal that there is a story, which, bizarre as it is, that his Haitian second in command had a man shot because Chesty had commented about how much he would have loved to have the man's horse. And he trusted them. In studying his time in Haiti, it is clear Chesty trusted his Haitians. He used his growing experience to tackle and succeed in over 40 encounters with the rebels. Chesty faced the cultural challenges inherent to directly leading Haitian gendarmes in autonomous operations, taking monstrous hikes into the Haitian mountains and jungles. And his gendarmes were mostly peasants. Chesty and his unit became known for their ability to get and use intelligence about rebel units to track them down, and that's just what they did. To the point that in 1919, Chesty's unit was singled out and became a mobile force instead of the normal practice of having them garrison town. One other result of Chesty's leadership was, at least partially responsible, and I know not how, for getting that first indigenous Haitian to receive a commission and become his unit's executive officer. The same officer who ordered a man shot to demonstrate his loyalty to Chesty. Let's put the experience he gained in Haiti into the context of Chesty's overall 37-year career.
The experience I gained in the small wars in the Caribbean and Central America proved invaluable in the jungle battles of the South Pacific. Go where the guns go to be a successful battlefield leader.
It spanned tours of duty, as we've highlighted, fighting in Haiti, afterwards in Nicaragua, where again he led local forces in over 60 encounters with rebel forces there, another culture. Subsequent duty in China, another culture. Commanding Marine Corps detachments on battleships, and a monumental battlefield experience in the jungles of Guadalcanal and Peleliu during World War II, and finally in the Korean War in a totally different geographical and environmental context. Ridges and mountains in sub-zero temperatures, having to fight out of the trap surrounded by Chinese. Chesty made the transition. In and between the Banana Wars and during World War II, his experience was in high demand. He led the training of a very high number of Marine officers for the island battles of the Pacific. Using his experience, the Corps developed tactics that were widely used in battle in World War II. Chesty even wanted to return from his forced medical retirement for the Vietnam War. Of course, he did not get his wish. An outcome of putting his experience into practice, Chesty was recognized by his superiors a record number of times with awards for valor in leading his Marines in battle, becoming the most decorated Marine in our history, rising from the rank of private to general, and a legend for generations of Marines to come. Using experience-based leadership skills, his choice, experience over other means of developing, building, sustaining leadership, clearly resulted in making him who he wanted to become, a successful battlefield leader. He took and shared the risks faced by his Marines by leading from the front lines and when they're living the same life as they did. Not just surviving that experience, but that's where he thrived. So as Marines do even today, we say, good night, Chesty, wherever you are. And now, on raising funds. Let me ask you a question. If you have all of the skills and abilities to become a leader in the field, what else must you have to reach your goals? Well, one of the most critical is funding. You must assuredly count on competition, a battle faced from year to year for funding to pursue your goals. So what that means is you're going to have to develop, build, sustain an appropriate level of self-promotion. Some would prefer to call it branding. If you like cliches, here's the one that applies. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Amelia, as noted by one commentator, was a successful self-promotion warrior, leveraging her image to pursue and achieve her goals. She had to have her own means by which to fly. Without them, she would not have been able to accomplish what she did.
I understand flying was expensive. How could you afford it?
I learned that funding was critical to achieving my goals.
Amelia found the right formula to make her own self-promotion extraordinarily successful. Of course, to some, this may be unpleasant, unsavory, or worse. It's not for everyone. Maybe it's not for you. Your view may be summarized as following. The stake that sticks up gets hammered down. So where does Amelia fit in?
I learned that funding was critical to achieving my goals. Too often my family and I had difficulty making ends meet when I was young. I learned the importance and how to raise and save money to spend wisely. Many a times I had to put my family above my own interests, however, never giving up on my dreams.
Well, Amelia is a story about a Midwestern from Kansas girl who grew up learning and practicing unconventional habits, a tomboy. Amelia is a study in individuality, independence, and leadership in a field, early aviation, and an icon not just in her time, but also today for women's participation and leadership in professional fields. We know she set numerous records in aviation. As examples, she was the first woman flown as a passenger across the Atlantic, gaining international celebrity status. And then on a precursor to what would become a helicopter, she went to record heights and she flew record distances, being the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, across the U.S. and back. from the mainland to Hawaii, and of course made an unsuccessful and fatal attempt to circumnavigate the world. She became an international celebrity, a very sought-after speaker, charging $250 per appearance, a lot in that time, whose own books became bestsellers, raising the funds she needed to fly further and farther during a decade that spanned parts of the Roaring '20s, the Great Depression, and the years leading up to World War II. She lives on as a legend. What we're focused on here is the reality of what she needed to fund her accomplishments. Amelia was a very private, family-oriented, some say domineering personality, thrust into the public eye, with no shield between her and an adoring but demanding public who wanted her in their midst. They wanted to touch her. People across the United States in a heavy, maybe even brutal series of public appearances to recount her adventures, to promote women's participation in the workplace and pursue careers, and the freedom provided by technology, actually advancing women's causes. That's not to say that she did not heavily benefit from her partner, G.P. Putnam, who was also her husband, who was her promoter. But it was Amelia who was at front and center in front of the lights or behind a microphone, and when demanded, speaking up without a microphone to be heard. And was she successful? Her accomplishments, funded through her efforts, tell that story. Heck yes. The wear and tear may have led to her ultimate downfall. But she died doing what she loved to do, flying, going down with her plane, and not by having a stroke due to old age, which she apparently greatly feared. The critical aspect of her fundraising career was the linkage, even dependence, between establishing aviation records and public attention. One fed the other. What she was accomplishing and lecturing about in telling her story in flight came at a critical period of American history. The interwar years, when women were stepping out, the economy was booming and resonated and rose to a much higher level emotionally as good news during the Great Depression. Internationally, she was celebrated, a great representative of America's potential, not just by the public, but by government officials and even royalty. Her flying experience was certainly measurable in flight hours and distances, and there were many, many of those. However, in between those flights, her life was filled with building more than her flight career, but pursuing her conviction that aviation was a business which required practical results, showing that flying was a mode of transportation and not just an entertainment in terms of barnstorming and stunting or even military application. Flight was revolutionizing travel, transportation, and more. Essentially, the sky was the limit. Self-promotion did not stop just at her personal appearances. They extended into launches of a fashion and luggage line. Her branding, her celebrity status provided opportunity to raise her status as a fashion figure. In 1934, Amelia was named one of the 10 best-dressed women by the Fashion Designers of America. Unfortunately, the Great Depression put a stop to commercialization of her designs, but just showed the crossover potential of being a celebrity. Just look at the professional athletes and what they make from endorsements today. So, what subject matter do her lectures cover? Having just one transcript and an audio of one of her lectures, titled A Woman's Place in Science, Amelia is heard opining on the impact of science and technology in several contexts. The first is in the freedom it gives to women to step away from the age-old drudgery of housework. The second context is with regard to humankind overall, very beneficial, calling for uniting behind ensuring technology serves useful purposes. And on the most significant accomplishment of technology of her time, flight and aviation. Was this self-promotion or something more profound, with real impact on her contemporary society? Let's place some further context around what she had to say in that lecture. It was given in 1935, so it came after the Roaring Twenties, when the economy grew and was able to absorb both the returning soldiers and utilize those women who had learned skills during the time that the U.S. was at war. Then came the Great Depression, which collapsed the employment rate, resulting in 25% unemployment. So there were less jobs, and what jobs were available resulted in being perceived to be those for the unemployed men, and that women, once again, belonged in the home. And here it is, Amelia is promoting that women should reject being just housewives and seek careers. Seems to be against the prevailing view at the time, even reflected in laws being enacted at that time, which either ignored women or plainly legislated against women taking up those career positions. Further, Amelia is touting technology at a time when whatever investment was being made in the economy was by the government in the New Deal, and it was meant for the unemployed. They were, in essence, manual jobs or service work, like building the Skyline Drive in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Again, Amelia's promotion seems counter to the prevailing view of that period of time. And yet, Amelia continued to raise funds based on her accomplishments, and during the period, even working with startup companies in developing commercialized flight. In addition, her accomplishments in aviation resulted in being hired or brought aboard Purdue University as a career counselor, and in the end, securing funding from the university for her flying laboratory, the plane on which she attempted to circumnavigate the globe. Of course, Amelia had natural attributes, traits, including charisma, which made her ideally suited to self-promote. A physique representative of her times, tall, lean, wearing clothes which fitted the image of a professional woman aviator. She communicated well, with a pleasing, self-deprecating manner, brimming with confidence, and speaking on the subject with enthusiasm and zeal. From what I've read, she spoke with optimism and seemingly ignored the economic environment facing the country, and particularly focused on women. Amelia hit the right buttons and had the right support from her husband, her partner, to successfully navigate self-promotion to fund her flying career. One could conclude that rather than being a warrior self-promoter, with all of its potentially negative connotation, she succeeded in branding herself and her causes. So, mahalo for viewing, and until next time, aloha.